Chapter 1. The Joke That Shouldn't Have Been Made. The promenade of Alara Station was a river of light and sound, where merchants shouted in 5 languages and holographic banners shimmered above stalls heavy with alien spices, glowing fabrics, and weapons that whispered when drawn. The hum of the station's massive engines was a constant undertone. A vibration felt more in the bones than in the ears. Humans were a rare sight here, and Elias Ward, grease-stained jacket, toolkit slung over his shoulder, was even rarer. A mechanic who fixed things nobody else wanted to touch. He stood at a food vendor's stall, waiting on his order when she appeared. Koresh. She moved like a blade unsheathed, tall and proud in the ceremonial armor of her people, the Sathri. Her tail flicked lazily behind her, a long, sinuous extension of her body covered in sleek fur that shimmered gold beneath the promenade's neon lights. Whispers followed her. Even the crowd seemed to part at her presence. Elias had only seen her once before, from a distance, but something about her aura pulled his words loose before he thought better of them. "Careful with that tail," he said, voice carrying just a little too far. "Looks like someone could trip over it. I'd hate to be responsible for a royal tail-related accident." The laughter of a nearby merchant snorted out like steam from a vent. Koresh froze mid-step. Her golden eyes narrowed, and the air between them turned sharp, like the silence before a plasma storm. "That," she said slowly, her voice low and rich, "was meant as humor." Elias's smile faltered. He raised his hands halfway in mock surrender, trying to play it off. "Just a joke. Humans, we laugh to keep the void from swallowing us. No harm meant." Her tail stilled, curling tight with controlled fury. Around them, the promenade hushed, alien faces leaning closer. Even the food vendor slid his tray away, as though not wanting to be associated with the human. To mock the tail, Koresh said, each word measured like a blade being drawn, "is to mock the soul of a Sathri. You have spat upon my honor in the open air." Elias's throat went dry. He hadn't known. No guidebook had mentioned tales as sacred, but the way the crowd's eyes told him this was no small thing. He tried to steady his voice. "Look, princess, I mean—" Silence. Her command cracked like a plasma whip, and Elias felt the sound in his bones. She stepped closer until metallic scent of her armor mixed with the ozone tang of the station's air scrubbers. "By tradition, your insult demands blood." The words fell heavy in the neon glow, and Elias suddenly understood what it meant to be alone in a place where human fragility was both a joke and a mystery. He felt the stations hum under his boots, the gravity field pulling him down, while every instinct screamed to run. But Koresh's eyes, fierce and wounded, held him rooted to the spot. And for the first time since leaving Earth, Elias wondered if humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or ships, but the dangerous habit of laughing at the wrong moment, because it meant they were never quite broken. Chapter 2. The Duel of Blood and Honor. The arena hung like a jewel cage at the heart of Alara Station. Transparent alloy walls arched high overhead, showing the vast sprawl of stars beyond. The Sathri called it a Hall of Silence, a place where disputes of honor ended in blood, or in the kind of silence only death could bring. Elias floated awkwardly in the center of the zero-gravity chamber, magnetic boots clicking against the grid floor only when he managed to plant them. His hands were slick with sweat, his breath loud inside the helmet collar strapped to his neck. Across from him, Koresh glided effortlessly, her tail curling for balance, every movement honed by years of ritual training. The crowd pressed close to the alloy walls. Hundreds of alien eyes burned with anticipation. The hum of the station's engine seemed louder here, vibrating through Elias's bones as if reminding of the thin line between life and the void. A Sathri elder's voice boomed through the chamber. "The human has spoken insult. By tradition, he must answer with flesh. Princess Koresh, do you accept?" Koresh's chin lifted. I do. Her gaze flicked to Elias. Anger sharp, but shadowed by something unspoken. A warning? A question? He couldn't tell. The elder raised a clawed hand. Then let honor be settled. A chime rang and the fight began. Koresh lunged, her body a blur in zurigi. Elias barely twisted aside, boots scraping across the lattice floor as her blade sparked against the metal where his chest had been. He stumbled, weightless, his body flailing as panic clawed at him. Think, Elias! He hissed at himself, clutching at the air. He wasn't a soldier. He fixed conduits, patched coolant leaks, bartered for engine parts in backroom stalls. But he'd survived pirate raids and system malfunctions. He knew how to improvise. Koresh came again, tail whipping, blade catching neon light from the walls. This time Elias ducked low, releasing his boot's magnetic lock. So he spun into open air. His stomach lurched as he floated upside down. But Koresh overshot, her blade slicing through nothing but empty space. The crowd roared. Not bad for prey, Koresh said, her voice carrying through the chamber's calm. Elias's lips twisted in a dry grin. You'll find humans are stubborn prey. She circled, graceful even in silence, while Elias steadied his breathing. His eyes darted to the environment. Exposed conduits along the wall, vents hissing faint vapor, a floating practice sphere the Sathri used for training. Tools. All tools, if he was desperate enough. Koresh lunged once more, and this time Elias kicked off a wall panel, spinning himself out of her reach. He grabbed the practice sphere mid-spin and hurled it blindly. It smacked into her shoulder, enough to throw off her aim. Her blade stopped inches from his throat. They froze, panting, the crowd dead silent. Elias could feel her breath over the comm, ragged with something other than exertion. She had him, could finish it, yet her eyes narrowed, tail flicking once, as if weighing more than just victory. Elias swallowed hard. He lifted his empty hands. If you're going to end me, do it. But know this. Humans don't fight to humiliate. We fight to survive. And sometimes we fight to protect. The chamber held its breath. Koresh hesitated. Then, in a move that shocked the Sathri audience, she pulled her blade back. The elder hissed in outrage. The human lives? Koresh's voice was calm, but beneath it burned something dangerous. He fought with honor, and he spared me when he had the chance. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elias blinked, stunned, only now realizing the sphere he'd thrown had knocked her weapon aside long enough for him to strike. But he hadn't. Instinct had told him to stop. The silence of the hall stretched on, but Elias knew one thing. Something had shifted. For the first time, the Sathri saw him not as a fool who mocked their culture, but as something far more dangerous. Something human. Chapter 3. Between enemies and allies. The neon markets of Alara Station were never quiet. The air was thick with spice smoke, the tang of ozone from overworked power coils, and the chatter of dozens of species bartering under holographic banners. Elias kept his head down as he moved through the crowded concourse, toolkit slung across his back. Ever since the duel, eyes followed him wherever he went. Some gleamed with curiosity, others with hostility, but none ignored him now. He hated it. Your stride is clumsy, a low voice purred behind him. Elias stopped short. He didn't need to turn to know who it was. His stomach tightened, but he forced himself to glance over his shoulder. Koresh was there, cutting through the crowd as if it parted for her. Armor replaced with a flowing sash of deep crimson, she still radiated danger, her tail swaying behind her with casual grace. "You've been shadowing me for an hour," Elias muttered, resuming his walk. "What do you want, princess?" The corners of her mouth curved into something between a smirk and a snarl. "To understand. You confuse me." "Glad to be of service," Elias said dryly. He stopped at a stall glowing with bioluminescent fruit, their skins pulsing like alien heartbeats. The vendor, a reptilian trader, stared at him with unblinking yellow eyes before slipping into respectful silence at Koresh's approach. She stepped closer, so close Elias caught the faint musk of her fur mingling with the incense in the air. "You fought as prey," she said, voice low, "but spared me as if you were predator. My people do not understand this contradiction." Elias picked up one of the fruits, its flesh warm beneath his fingers, then set it back down. His hands still trembled faintly when he thought about the duel. "Humans don't fit into neat little boxes," he said. "Sometimes we fight to win. Sometimes we fight to prove we don't have to." Koresh's golden eyes studied him, unblinking. Around them, the marketplace moved on, alien laughter, clinking spurs of traders, the electric whine of hover carts. But for Elias, everything narrowed to that gaze. "You insulted me before the eyes of my people," Koresh said, her tail curling tight, betraying tension. "By law, I should despise you. Yet," she tilted her head, "you remind me of no one I have ever met. Not Sathri, not any species." Elias gave a half smile, though his voice cracked slightly. "That's humanity for you. We're equal parts brilliance and stupidity." For a moment, Koresh was silent. Then, to Elias's shock, a low laugh escaped her throat, a soft rumble like the purr of a predator hiding amusement. Heads turned in the crowd at the sound, astonished that their princess laughed in the presence of a human. Elias exhaled slowly. Something fragile, dangerous, and unspoken had shifted between them. She was no longer simply a rival or executioner, but not yet an ally. Chapter 4. The Shadows Behind the Curtain. The lower decks of Valera Station were nothing like the glittering promenades above. Here, neon was replaced by flickering lights, the air heavy with rust, oil, and the faint stink of recycled water. Pipes hissed steam in the cramped corridors, and every shadow seemed to hide a knife. Elias ducked under a leaking conduit, Koresh close behind. She moved with the silent grace of her people, her tail low and tense. The princess didn't belong here. Her polished armor caught the faint light like a beacon, but she had insisted on coming. "You've never walked these levels, have you?" Elias whispered, his voice almost lost in the hum of power generators. Her golden eyes flicked toward him. "The underbelly is for outcasts and scavengers, not for Sathri of my bloodline." "And yet here you are," Elias said, smirking, "following me." Her tail flicked. "You intrigue me, human, but do not mistake intrigue for trust." Before Elias could reply, the corridor's air shifted, sharp, metallic. Wrong. His instincts prickled. "Down!" he hissed, shoving Koresh sideways just as a bolt of plasma seared past, scorching the wall where she had stood. Figures detached from the shadows ahead, Sathri, their fur painted in ritual ash, weapons glowing faintly in the dim light. Their eyes gleamed with malice. "Traitors," Koresh spat, drawing her blade. "They are the rival clans. They would use your death to shame me." Another shot cracked through the air. Elias ducked behind a pipe, heart hammering. He had no weapon, just a battered toolkit slung across his back. His hands fumbled inside until he found a plasma torch, sparks spitting from its nozzle. Not much, but it was something. Koresh surged forward, tail whipping for balance as she clashed with the assassins. Her blade sang against theirs, the clash of metal echoing like thunder in the tight corridor. Elias moved in the chaos, torch spitting fire as he slashed it across a fuel line. A hiss of vapor filled the air, fogging the corridor with burning mist. The assassins hesitated. Just for a moment, Koresh struck like lightning, her blade finding flesh. One of the Sathri lunged for Elias, claws raised. Instinct overrode thought. Elias jammed the sparking torch into a panel overhead. overloading the circuit. The corridor lights exploded, showering sparks, and gravity flickered. Suddenly, bodies lifted into the air, flailing weightless. Elias spun, stomach lurching, as the assassin's momentum carried him past, snarling in frustration. Koresh twisted midair, using her tail as a rudder, and drove her blade into another attacker's chest. In the chaos, Elias grabbed a loose conduit and swung it clumsily, connecting with the Sathri's jaw. The alien howled, spinning into the wall, and then it was over. The survivors fled into the shadows, hissing vows of vengeance. The corridor settled into silence, save for the hum of the engines and Elias's ragged breathing. Koresh floated in the dim light, golden formatted with blood that was not her own. She turned to Elias, chest rising and falling, and for the first time her expression was stripped bare, not the mask of royalty, but something raw. "You saved my life," she said quietly. Elias wiped sweat from his brow, forcing a shaky grin. "Guess we're even now." She studied him for a long moment, tail curling slow. "No, not even. You fought without weapon or training, yet you endured. That is uniquely human." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken tension. Then Koresh's lips curved faintly, almost against her will, and Elias realized the most dangerous shift of all. The line between enemy and something else had begun to blur. Chapter 5. A Choice Written in Blood. The Sathri High Council chamber rose like a cathedral of steel and flame. Massive pillars shaped like claws arched toward the ceiling, and walls of obsidian glass reflected the glow of alien fire pits burning with violet plasma. At the center stood a circular dais, lit from above so that whoever stepped upon it was laid bare before all. Elias stood there now, alone. His boots echoed against the polished floor as he faced the semicircle of towering Sathri elders. Their fur shimmered in ceremonial oils, their tails coiled like whips behind them. Above, balconies crowded with spectators buzzed with whispers, alien voices, sharp and sibilant, carrying words Elias could not understand but whose meaning he felt in his bones. Koresh stood at his side, armored once more, her face carved from stone. Her golden eyes, however, betrayed the storm within. The eldest counselor's voice rang out, low and resonant. "Human Elias Ward, you mocked the honor of the Princess Koresh. Though she spared your life, your insult cannot go unanswered. By our law, only two paths remain, your death or her renunciation of the throne." A hiss rippled through the chamber. Elias's pulse thundered in his ears. Death for him, or ruin for her. Both options tasted like ash. He glanced at Koresh. For the first time since they met, she avoided his gaze, jaw tight, tail curling in shame. She had saved him before the assassins, fought beside him in the station's depths. Now she would lose everything because of his careless words. No, not like this. Elias lifted his chin. His voice carried, steadier than he felt. "I won't let her pay for my mistake. If blood is demanded, then let it be mine alone, but not through execution. Give me trial by fire." The council chamber erupted in roars and snarls. Trial by fire was an ancient rite, invoked rarely, reserved for those who sought to prove their honor through combat endurance or sheer survival against impossible odds. Koresh's head snapped toward him, eyes wide. "Elias, no, you don't know what you—" "Humans are good at one thing," he interrupted softly, just for her. "We don't quit." The eldest counselor rose, towering over them, voice shaking the chamber. "So be it. The human chooses trial by fire. Should he endure, his insult will be burned clean, and Koresh will keep her claim. Should he fail, his blood will sanctify her honor." Elias's stomach turned cold, but he stood taller, his gaze sweeping across the alien crowd. Every species, every culture had dismissed humanity as fragile, reckless, a footnote in the galactic ledger. And yet here he was, about to stake not only his life, but Koresh's future on nothing but stubbornness, an impossible spark that made humans fight long after reason said they shouldn't. As the chamber lights dimmed and the violet flames of the pits flared higher, Elias whispered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else, "If this is how I die, then let them see why humanity deserves a place among the stars." Chapter 6, Beyond Tail and Tongue. The trial had ended in fire and fury. Elias's body bore the proof. Burns along his arms, bruises blooming across his ribs, and cuts that stung with every movement. Yet he was alive. More than alive. He had endured where no one expected him to. Now, silence hung over the observation deck of Valera Station. The massive viewport stretched before him. A sea of stars scattered like cold embers across endless black. Below, the glow of alien trade routes shimmered like rivers of neon through the void. The hum of the station's engines pulsed beneath his boots, steady as a heartbeat. Elias stood with one arm braced against the railing, still catching his breath. He hadn't realized how much of himself he'd left in that trial, how close he'd come to breaking. But humanity had always been good at pushing past breaking points. Soft footsteps approached behind him. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. "Your body is broken," Koresh said quietly. He smirked, lips split with a cut. "You should see the other guy." She came to stand beside him, golden for catching the faint glow of starlight. No armor now, only a simple wrap of deep violet silk. For the first time since he met her, she looked less like a princess and more like a woman, worn, scarred, and terribly human in her exhaustion. "They will speak of this for generations," Koresh murmured. Her tail flicked once, curling against the railing. "The human who mocked my honor, and then saved it with his own blood." "Doesn't have quite the same ring as engineer for hire," Elias said, voice dry. Koresh turned, her eyes sharp as ever but softened by something he had only glimpsed before, respect and perhaps more. She brushed her tail against his hand, deliberate this time, a gesture not of insult, but of intimacy. Elias froze, staring at the soft fur brushing his skin. The crowd's memory of his careless joke seemed like a lifetime ago. "Next time, human," Koresh whispered, her voice low and steady, "choose your words more carefully." His lips curved into a weary smile. "Or maybe," he said, meeting her gaze, "I'll just choose you." For a moment, the hum of the engine seemed to fade, the stars beyond holding their breath. And then, standing side by side in the vast silence of the universe, a human and an alien princess found something rare. Not just survival, not just honor, but the beginning of something neither culture had a word for. The viewport stretched wide across the starship's deck, revealing alien constellations burning like jewels in the black. Below, the neon veins of a distant city world shimmered, its towers glowing with colors no human tongue could name. The hum of the engines was steady, a heartbeat carrying them into whatever came next. Elias leaned against the railing, battered but unbroken. His burn still ached, his ribs throbbed, yet he stood tall. Humanity had always been fragile, but it was in their fragility that strength was born, the refusal to bow, even when every star seemed against them. Beside him, Koresh approached in silence. The warrior princess no longer carried her blade. Instead, her tail brushed lightly against his hand, deliberate and unashamed. Once, the gesture had nearly cost him his life. Now, it bound them together in something deeper than honor. Her golden eyes searched his face. "You bled for me when you had no reason." "Why?" Elias gave a faint smile, weary but sure. "Because that's what humans do. We make meaning where none exists. We fight, so someone else doesn't have to." For the first time, Koresh's lips curved into something soft, almost human. She leaned closer, her voice little more than a vow. Then let us fight together. Stars glimmer beyond the glass, endless and waiting, and as the engines carried them forward, Elias realized the universe had just shifted, because a human's careless joke had become the spark of something eternal. Next time, she whispered, tail curling against his, choose your words more carefully. He smiled. Maybe, or maybe I'll just choose you.